You would say then that you have the respect of the rank and file, but do you also have the same in the leadership structures, i.e. what's your relationship with Julius Zuma now? We only got to experience what took place on social media, but like you keep saying, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. Are you okay? We've seen you at events together since then, so what's it like now?
There's never been any hostility, and there's never been any political difference that I'm aware of, because whenever we interact, is my sister, my brother, is everything is going well. That has been a consistent relationship since I joined Umkhonto we Sizwe.
Let's talk about the hostilities perhaps then between the EFF and the MK party. You've been declared, one of their enemies, but you are consistent with your line about uniting progressive forces. How would you go about repairing, restoring and mending that relationship? Is that something that you also have as your radar? Secretary General to Secretary General with a Marshal Dlamini, what's taking place there? Because it does have the potential to impact the Progressive Caucus and this overall objective that you also said you left the EFF for to attain.
No, look, the most dynamic politically sound thing which the MK did, which we also made a plea that all other political organizations should do, we sat in a meeting of the National High Command to begin to characterize the domestic and global balance of forces. So in our characterization of the domestic balance of forces, we then also got to characterize all the political formations and role players in South Africa. We did characterize to say that the ANC, although it is captured by the white capitalist establishment, is being puppet mastered by Stellenbosch in terms of what it has to achieve. We say that we can't categorize and define the ANC as an enemy force. We say it's a strategic opponent which is contested. It's a contested opponent. So there's a difference between an enemy and an opponent. Enemy you have to crush. You must eliminate completely. You don't talk to enemy. You don't have any engagements at all. But a contested opponent, you contest its ideological character and form and its politics in general, so that it then drifts closer towards what you stand for as an organization. And then our characterization of the EFF is not an enemy force, it's not even an opponent. We say it's a potential strategic ally which shares the same values and principles with Umkhonto we Sizwe by and large. And that we know because Umkhonto we Sizwe and the EFF are co-signatories of a charter that unites the Progressive Caucus in Parliament. And that charter speaks politics as to what we stand for. We agree on redress of the imbalances of the past. We don't think what we have now is the status quo must continue forever. We agree that the land must be reclaimed and be given to particularly those who were excluded by apartheid and colonialism. We agree on provision of free education. We agree on anti-imperialism.
So when will it be time to unite?
No, look, I think there has to be a certain degree of political and ideological maturity that happens amongst the individual leaders of all parties, particularly of the EFF, because there is some emotive, subjective reaction to politics, and you can never get politics right if
Julius Malema says it will never happen.
So that is the subjectivity which doesn't seem to be founded on sound ideological and political basis, and you can never get politics right if every time there is a political development you want to emotionally react to such a circumstance. Then you are in politics for a wrong reason, because politics, you need absolute composure and you need proper temperament to be able to read the balance of forces and not to be emotive about each and every issue, because you will become personal. Like, you will even miss important opportunities. I'll give an example, Zianda, in terms of what got to happen in in the first term, when the EFF went to Parliament, because there was, at the leadership level, there was a narrow oppositionist approach to everything else that President Zuma was doing or saying. But if you were go on and check now as to what was President Zuma saying when he was head of state and president, on free education, on the land and everything else, on things which the EFF stands for. But there was no appreciation that here is a head of state who is saying, let us unite all the black political parties to have 2/3 so that we can expropriate land without compensation. He said that in 2017, in the National House of Traditional Leaders in Parliament, he was very clear even about characterization of where our problems come from colonialism. The Freedom Front Plus even fought him vociferously. But because of narrower politics, everything else Zuma says is wrong.
But you were there.
And you know,
I mean, that's why people say
that is where you have to learn from some of the mistakes. I don't want to disassociate myself from some of the collective decisions that were taken there. But there are certain things which I must mention, though, is that I did write publicly, by the way, anyone can search that in Google to say that President Zuma was correct on the following issues, like on several occasions, to illustrate that we need to maximize on what he has said correctly. Mbuzeni will always remind me that you previously had said we must have a constructive and sometimes confrontational approach with President Zuma. And you were cautioned that everything else that we do with President Zuma must be oppositional. 100%. It doesn't matter whether he is speaking sense, whether he is speaking the politics that you agree with, you are just fighting Zuma. It doesn't matter what are the circumstances. I don't want to be in politics that are narrower like that. I will never be a part of such politics. That is part of the reasons that we had to disassociate with some projects, because you realize that there is no appreciation of different conjunctures and appreciation of real politics. It's about point scoring and wanting to outshine people and wanting to appear much more cleverer and much more radical than everyone else. And the majority of times, that doesn't lead to anything. So then the version of politics of President Zuma is that it doesn't matter what we have said about him before. It doesn't matter what people do. He always finds a way of uniting a common perspective to pursue a progressive agenda. And that is what I appreciate and I am proud to associate with, whether I'm a leader of MK or not.
Floyd Shivambu, the Secretary General of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, thank you for your time. Staying, not going anywhere. Whether he is a Secretary General or an ordinary member, so says Floyd Shivambu, but lots on the horizon for the MK Party and a little bit of insight about what's been happening internally. Some of the teething issues, nothing to be worried about.